ahead and get started with introductions. Good afternoon. It's November 18th, 2024. I'm Hearing Officer Nicole Kinsey with the Administrative Hearings Office of the State Water Resources Control Board. This is a status conference for the pending petition for assignment of State Filed Application 5634 and the associated Water Right Application 5634X of Nevada Irrigation District, and the pending requests for release from priority of State Filed Applications 5633 and 5634 in favor of Water Right License 11120 of South Sutter Water District. This status conference is being conducted by Zoom web conference and is also being broadcast live on the AHO YouTube channel. The audio and video are being recorded, and we will post files of this recording along with the Zoom-generated transcript to the AHO FTP site. The YouTube recording will also be available on the AHO YouTube webpage. I'd like to go ahead and move to appearances. I think this will be a pretty quick check-in today, but we'll see. I will identify each of the entities as usual that has filed an NOI in this proceeding, and if you are representing that entity, please go ahead and unmute your microphone and state your name. And we will start with Nevada Irrigation District.
Good afternoon. This is Andrew McClure of the Manassian firm for Nevada Irrigation District, and I see on the call Jennifer Hansen, NID's General Manager.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. South Sutter Water District.
Good afternoon. Austin Cho of Downey Brand on behalf of South Sutter Water District.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Contra Costa Water District.
Good afternoon. Holly Jacobson on behalf of Contra Costa Water District and Yuba County Water Agency.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Camp Far West Irrigation District.
Good afternoon, Kelly Tabor, Somac Simmons and Dunn on behalf of Camp Far West Irrigation District. And I see that the district's engineer, Nick Bonsignor, is also here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. State Water Contractors. Placer County Water Agency.
Good afternoon. Dan Kelly, General Counsel, Placer County Water Agency.
Thank you. Good afternoon. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation.
Ray Salberg, Bureau of Reclamation.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Good afternoon. Kathleen Miller for CDFW.
Thank you. Good afternoon. California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance.
Good afternoon. Chris Schutz for the California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Trout Unlimited.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kinsey. Tracy Sheehan with Foothills Water Network. I can represent Trout Unlimited today, and I also have a list of others that I can let you know about when you're ready.
I'm ready. Please do.
Okay. South Yuba River Citizens League, Northern California Council of Fly Fishermen International Fishers, Save Auburn Ravine Salmon and Steelhead, American Rivers, American Whitewater, Protect American River Canyons, Bob Center, and Tributary Whitewater.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sheehan. Good afternoon. Sierra Club.
David Zielinski, and Tracy can represent us anytime she wants.
Thank you. Nevada City Rancheria Tribal Council. United Auburn Indian Community. American River Watershed Institute.
Otis Wallen with the American River Watershed Institute.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Diana Suarez and Cam Suarez.
Good afternoon, Diana Suarez for Diana and Cam Suarez.
Thank you. Good afternoon. David Sprunk and Sherry Sprunk. And Jeff Litton. Is there anyone else who intends to participate today who has not had a chance to introduce themselves?
Friends of the River, Ron Stork and Keiko Mertz.
Thank you very much. I apologize, Mr. Stark. I did not check you off the list. I just skipped you. I apologize for that. Thank you and welcome.
And good
Is there
afternoon,
anyone else?
Sims Ely with Nevada County.
Oh, you're not on my list either. I've done this before. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologize. Did I miss anyone else this afternoon?
Good afternoon. This is Laura Peters. I may or may not.
And Ms. Peters, are you appearing on behalf of yourself or do you represent?
On behalf of myself.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. And did I miss anyone else?
I'll raise my hand. This is Eric Soderlin with the California Department of Water Resources.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Soderlin.
Good afternoon.
And I'll mention Nevada County, I believe we know about you and I failed to put you on the list, but Ms. Peters, if you would like to be, and Mr. Soderlund, if you or your represented entities would like to be added to the service list and are not already on the service list, please just send an email to the AHO and we can, with your
I'm on
preferred
the
contact
service list.
information.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Same here.
Great, wonderful. You're ahead of me. So the purpose of the status conference today is to see where we are at. There's been some updates in this matter. It looks like I received the status conference statement from NID on October 15th, which was also happened to be the same day we sent out this, the notice for this status conference. So I didn't get a chance to address that in this notice for this proceeding. I understand from NID's status conference statement that NID has submitted a request to the Division of Water Rights to cancel water right application 5634X01 and the associated petition for assignment of state filed application 5634. I also understand that this does not alter NID's protest to SSWD's, that's South Sutter Water District's request for release from priority of state filed applications 5633 and 5634 in favor of water right license 11120. So I think where we are at is that we are prepared to close out part of this proceeding that was referred to the AHO, but we still have a remaining portion with respect to South Sutter Water District's request for release from priority. I will turn first to Mr. McClure. Is there anything that you would like to add to the summary I just gave? Is that
That's all accurate. No, I think you've got it right.
Great. And just to let you know, my intent will be for the AHO to issue a formal memorandum stating that that portion of the matter has been closed out. It will be up to the Division of Water Rights to take any further action on the request to cancel. So you would expect to receive any further communication from them, but you will see a closing memorandum from us and we will circulate it to all the parties on this service list. So that's my intent with respect to that piece. With that, the question is, how do we move forward with respect to South Sutter Water District's pending request for release from priority? And with that, I think I'll turn to Mr. Cho. My general questions are, which I think I outlined to some extent in the notice of status conference for today, but what is your proposal for how we should move forward? Do you need time to discuss settlement further given the updates with respect to NID's proposed projects? And then if not, do you have a guesstimate on how many days of hearing, at least from your perspective, you think this might need? So with that, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Kenzie. To your first question, I guess the amount of time we would need would depend on when the AHO would be prepared to schedule a hearing on this request for releases from priority. I understand from our prior discussions that there are a number of things going on with the State Water Board right now. And so we recognize that I think prior statements reflected an estimate that a hearing on South Sutter's filings wouldn't take place until some point in 2025, possibly even in the spring. So I guess if that's the case, we wouldn't need any additional time, we do not believe, to aid in the resolution of protests. However, we are continuing to engage in good faith discussions with NID and are open to discussions with other protestants as needed. But at this time, I don't anticipate requesting additional time that would delay a hearing. To your second question on the number of days, it's a little difficult to provide a projection there, but if I had to guess, I would think that we would probably need about a day for South Sutter's case in chief, and possibly another day for cross-examination questions and other responses.
Thank you.
I can't speak for the other parties, though.
Understood. Thank you. I think with that, I'll look first to NID and Mr. McClure if you have any comments on this, and I will also look to the room with respect to both scheduling, the timing of scheduling a hearing in this proceeding, and then also an estimate with respect to each party of the amount of time to present case in chief evidence. I know some parties may not, anticipate participating in case in chief by presenting evidence, but would participate by cross-examination. I'm not asking for a commitment. I know we're early in the process, but just to get an idea for purposes of scheduling. So first I will turn to Mr. McClure.
NID would be prepared to go to a hearing anytime after the new year. In terms of presentation of evidence, I had 5 days. I think that's probably way too much, but I would rather estimate high and have the days and clear the calendar if we conclude early than need to get back onto the AHO's busy schedule. So somewhere between 1 and 5 is my guesstimate.
And would it be the intent of NID to put on witnesses, to present witnesses and testimony?
Yeah, I think given the county of origin issues, without getting into questions of who bears the burden but we would certainly put on affirmative evidence with respect to that issue.
Thank you. With that, I'll look to the room. If you would please raise your hand, either virtually or actually, if you'd like to speak to any of these issues with respect to timing of scheduling a hearing and hearing days. Ms. Jacobson, I see and Mr. Schutz, I saw your real hand too, but we'll start with Ms. Jacobson, please.
Thank you. It's unclear at this time whether either of my clients would participate and in what context, but I do think it's possible we need a couple hours.
Thank you. And Mr. Schutz.
Sure, thank you. I'd sort of like to take a step back and ask what the need or purpose of a hearing would be at this time in the absence of a pending petition or application from Nevada Irrigation District or any other upstream party. It seems to me that a lot of what we would be addressing in a hearing would go to issues of county of origin. And we've seen from South Sutter, I believe, an admission or an agreement that South Sutter, even if it got a release from priority, would not have the opportunity, would be subject to a caveat that if NID could show, or any other upstream entity in the counties of Placer or Nevada could show that they needed the water and put in an application and petition for assignment of a state filing, then South Sutter's release from priority would have to yield to pending a showing that that county needed the water. And so it seems to me that a hearing now would deal primarily on the need for water of an upstream entity. And it's hard for me to understand what the value to the AHO or to the participants would be in having basically hearing a fact on NID's need for water at this time in the absence of an actual petition or application from NID. Suppose that one were to determine that at this time NID doesn't need the water, and in X number of years, NID files a petition or application for an assignment of state filing for a different project. Then one would have to go through the process again of determining factually whether or not NID can make a showing that it had the need for water for the development of the county pursuant to sections 10500 and the following. So, and I don't see what advantage South Sutter gains at this time from a release from priority, when how that actually works out in practice is going to be limited by a showing in the future at some time by an upstream county that county needs the water. And South Sutter Water District now has the water available to it that's coming to it. And given the constraints of existing water rights, and having a hearing that would take time and resources for the AHO, ultimately for the water board and for all the hearing participants, just doesn't seem to me make sense in the hypothetical, particularly because it's not just because it's someone else's, it's the facts having to do with someone else's need for water that would be primarily at play, in my view, in this particular hearing. And since, as I said, that entity NID does not have a pending application or petition at this time, why one would ask them to present evidence about its need for water doesn't seem to have a practical basis. And I think we've seen, even from the time estimates from Mr. Cho and Mr. McClure, that the predominant, or the majority of the information that is likely to be presented would go to NID's need for water. So that's what I'd like to put before the AHO at this time. If you're not prepared to rule on the basis of, without further discussion, perhaps you could solicit briefs or something like that. But I'm just really having a hard time understanding the need for the hearing at all. So sorry for the long-winded discussion, but I hope I made my thoughts clear.
Thank you, Mr. Schutz. I think, you raised some good questions that, from my perspective, that really go to a conversation which sounds like is ongoing between NID and South Sutter Water District. This sounds like a basis for a possible settlement agreement. We can turn back to this. I'll turn first to Mr. Stork. Would you like to comment on this?
I'd like to extend Chris's remarks a bit by posing the question of what the practical purpose of a release from priority hearing would be. Typically, the water board, when it covers releases from priority, can undertake two things. One would be to try and determine what the upstream county of origin's needs would be, and would make some kind of explicit finding that this is the number, and this is the number that would be not subject to the release in priority. That's option one. And option two would be just a general reservation that that the release in priority is still subject to potential assignments of state filings that are based on the county of origin's demonstrated need, which it would have to demonstrate again, for water for its development. In the case of number 2, a general reservation, that doesn't buy South Sutter very much. And I think Chris's point was that a hearing that is meant to decide the future need for water in NID service area or other areas in the county is somewhat speculative and premature, given that, you know, this is not the primary focus of upstream entities at this point, and certainly not in this hearing. So I'm like Chris, I'm remain puzzled a bit about what the practical utility of going forward on release and priority hearing would be.
Let me ask this question. This is a little bit of a different question, but maybe Mr. Stork and Mr. Schutz, what are the interests of the entities that you represent in South Sutter Water District's request for release from priority? Looks like Mr. Schutz, you're off mute. But might
Chris
be
is.
I think that the primary interest we'd have in a hearing I'm going to go off of video because I'm having some problems with my audio. Starting again, the primary interest would be having to make a determination now about what South Sutter, about what Nevada Irrigation District's needs would be, and whether or not we'd be compelled to present evidence about what we thought those were, specifically in the absence of a pending application or petition. It's kind of, and doing that in the hypothetical is a lot different than doing that in regards to a specific proposal, application, or petition. And so potentially we'd have to devote at least enough resources to review NID's recent plan for water and sort of do a lot of technical analysis on that, and look at its policy conclusions, besides the policy conclusion of that it decided to withdraw its application and petition for Centennial Dam, simply in order to get to the issue of whether or not there was a showing of the need for water now, to which South Sutter Water District's release from priority would be, by which it would be limited. So I think that's our part of the interest. And part of the interest is if we fail to undertake that kind of effort now, and NID comes in several years and comes forward with yet another proposal, we'd have to repeat the exercise or be limited by what we did now in the hypothetical, which really wouldn't be as good an analysis or specific as what we, in the ideal, would prefer to make based on a specific application and petition.
So to summarize what Chris is saying is there's an interest on our part of the economy of effort of the AHO, of the parties, of South Sutter and NID, on whether or not the amount of time and effort is worth the investment by everybody.
And I was looking back at the protests just for clarity, Mr. Stork. Friends of the River filed a protest to South Sutter Water District's request for release from priority. Is that right?
I'd have to review. I think it's possible that we were on Foothill Water Network's protest.
Yes, they
That's
were.
correct. Yes.
And your concern is, I'm just trying to reconceptualize. I was going to look back, but maybe you can tell me.
Oh,
What in short form, what does the protest say? What are you protesting?
One of the issues was whether or not was limitation on future needs. And one of the issues had to do with South Sutter gaining some kind of advantage and still selling water as sort of a broader policy issue. Those are the two things that I recall off the top of my head.
Okay,
But
thank you.
look it up. And at this point, I would say that if this were to go forward, I'm not sure whether we would try to present a case in chief or whether we'd participate by cross-examination and present rebuttal evidence. I mean, we just haven't gotten that far.
I think this summarizes that well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess I'll turn first to Mr. Cho. I don't know if you have anything, if you would like to respond to any of those comments.
I think I would just out the gate respectfully disagree with the characterizations that Mr. Schutz and Mr. Stork made with regard to the purpose of the Feigenbaum Act and of the county of origin priority and what South Sutter's position are. We've addressed parts of these substantive issues in prior writings and briefs. We would be prepared to, as Mr. McClure has suggested previously, to provide additional briefing on the county of origin issues. At this point, I would just state that there was a purpose for the release from priority back in 1958, which was in favor of South Sutter's other water right license for Camp Far West under application 14804. And this release from priority would merely be to align, align South Sutter Water District's ability to manage water with some additional certainty, only with respect to any additional water rights that may be assigned under the state filed application 5633 and 5634.
Thank you.
And I, for one, always respect somebody who can remember the title of the statute from 1927.
On this issue, are there any others who would like to chime in on the timing of a hearing, whether a hearing is necessary, and the length of any hearing that the AHO sets?
If we're speaking about the timing of a hearing, if one goes forward, considering other matters that are currently pending, and the fact that there's not an urgent action needed in order to preserve South Sutter's rights, I would request that it get postponed into late 2025 or early 2026. I don't see that South Sutter would be prejudiced by that. Or perhaps with a caveat until such time as Nevada Irrigation District made another water rights application or petition, sort of whichever comes sooner.
Thank you, Mr. Schutz. So, Mr. Cho, I'll just ask this. I understand that throughout this proceeding, South Sutter Water District has been asking for a hearing and continues to ask for it. After, once you had time to go through settlement discussions. Do you have anything to add to the comments that South Sutter Water District has already made with respect to timing of a hearing, urgency of a hearing, anything with that respect?
think I would agree with Mr. Schutz that this is not an urgent matter and that we don't need to have this resolved immediately. However, I'll just remind the hearing officer and the rest of the parties that South Sutter filed its petition in 2016. So we've been waiting for 8 years to get some resolution on this, and um, consistent with the purposes of the AHO, we would like to see that this matter is resolved at some point while I'm still an attorney.
Me too. Thank you, Mr. Cho. So based on all these comments, what I'm inclined to do is, and I understand there may be room here for consideration of whether there are legal issues to resolve, but what I'm inclined to do is set this out on the calendar, issue a hearing notice well in advance of any hearing, set this on our calendar so that we have a goalpost that we are working towards and we can stake out our time. And also we will set this in such a way that this hearing will be on the calendar, and then other hearings will have to work around it as needed. I think that will set us up. In addition, I think the advantage of having the hearing issues laid out in a hearing notice may help distill some of the issues for discussion if there's further settlement discussion. Sometimes that helps. We will also have a chance to talk about whether the hearing issues are correctly set. So that would be my intent going forward. I don't think at this point we need to talk about, and I'll turn to the room, but I don't think we need to set a subsequent status conference that any what will become if assuming we're going to hearing, it will be a pre-hearing conference that we'll have out, but it'll be out a fair ways based on when that hearing date is set. But are there any other comments that any party would like to make before we conclude for today? Ms. Miller, please.
Sure. I need to check with my client, but there's a possibility DFW will withdraw from this matter, given that NID has canceled its application. If that's the case, how would the AHO like us to notify of that decision? Or just a simple email?
An email would be fine. I think the formal way to do it would be a request to withdraw or cancel your protest. But
right.
an email would be fine. Yes, thank you. Ms. Jacobson.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. My question is, do you have an idea of when this hearing might be set? Early 2025, late 2025? I only ask because there's a potential conflict for my office in July of 2025. So if we could avoid that month.
Yes, so this is not a surprise reveal. The AHO, I and many of those on this call are quite busy for the early part of 2025, and that will be expected to continue later into 2025. I was thinking about setting this hearing for some time if, I'll have further consideration about whether a hearing is appropriate now, but I'm thinking about fall of 2025, winter 2025. I'd like to set it in the 2025 year because I would like to set it within the year. But that way we would all be on notice well over a year about a year's worth of notice, depending on when we set it, or almost a year. And there will be time to get to that. But that's what I'm thinking about. And we can avoid July. I have some travel plans. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Let's not do July. Thank you. Mr. Cho.
Yes, just to clarify, with regard to any pending protests to NID's petition, are you asking that any of the parties that filed protests to submit a withdrawal of that protest in light of NID's indication that it's withdrawing its petition?
No, I understood the withdrawal to be, and maybe I misunderstood, with respect to South Sutter Water District's petition, not with respect to NID's application, which is now going to be canceled, or I guess canceled might be the right word. Did I misunderstand? Mr. Cho, what
I don't believe CDFW filed a protest to South Sutter's petition, so
no, we did not. It was more of just get out of the hearing. Yeah.
I see. So Ms. Miller, you're asking, how do you get off the service list? Is that essentially the question?
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, just send an email. Then it wouldn't be any formal withdrawal. Just send an email requesting to be removed from the service list, and we are happy to do that.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the clarification, Mr. Cho. Are there any other comments or procedural issues we should address today? All right, then with that, thank you very much for joining us today. I think this was a helpful discussion, and we are adjourned. Please expect a hearing notice to come from, well, a hearing notice or follow-up ruling to come from our office in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.